right, I think we can get started. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming today to the Hingham Republican Town Committee's annual Candidates Forum. My name is Laura Marwill, and I'm the chair of the Hingham Republican Town Committee. And I thank you all for being here today. I'll be moderating the event. Before we begin our program, I'd like to observe a moment of silence in memory of former Selectman John Riley. May he rest in peace. Thank you. The purpose of this event is for the candidates to introduce themselves and their platforms, talk a little bit about what their plans would be if they were elected to office, and to give the audience an opportunity to ask questions about issues that are of interest or concern to them. And while this event is organized and sponsored by the Hingham Republican Town Committee, this is not a partisan event, and we welcome the participation of all the candidates and the audience members. Please allow me a moment to speak about format. Candidates will be invited to the front table by office. We'll be starting with the Board of Selectmen and the moderator. Within each office, I will invite the candidates to come to the lectern one by one and give a 3-minute opening statement. The candidates will then take their seats and entertain questions from the audience and from the lectern. Jerry, here in front, please raise your hand. We'll be keeping time and will flash signals to the speakers as the time winds down. Now, Jerry, do you also have a sound signal? Excellent. So in the event that the gentle urging of the signs that Jerry will be holding up are inadequate, he may use his discretion to use a sound signal to urge you back to your seat if your time is up. So for members of the audience who wish to ask a question, you'll see there is a microphone in the center of the room. Kathy, will you point to that? So please go to the microphone and identify yourself and ask a question. You can pick up the microphone and just bring it to your mouth. If you prefer to sit in your seat, I will repeat the question up here into this microphone so that our audience here and at home can hear the questions. So, unless there are any questions about the format, let's get started with Paul Healy, candidate for Board of Selectmen, and Michael Puzo, candidate for moderator. Please come to the front. Paul and Michael have to leave early to make it over to the Citizen of the Year event today, so I'm going to have them first, and then they will be leaving after that. So I would like to invite Paul, who is running unopposed for re-election to the Board of Selectmen, to come to the lectern first, please. Paul?
Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Healy. I'm a candidate for Selectman, Town of Hingham. By way of background, I grew up in this town. I went to the public school here along with my 5 sisters and brother. I married Esther Kandari, who's seated there in the audience. We have 5 children, all have gone through the Hingham public school system. I've got about 34 years of experience, service to the town. That includes a brief stint on the highway department when I was in high school, 11 years on the police department, midnight to 8, left as a sergeant after graduating from law school. 5 years later, I joined the planning board. I ran for elective office, was elected. I sat there for 4 terms. Many of the newer neighborhoods and projects that you see in this town, I had something to do with in one form or another. I ran for selectman several years ago and currently reside in that position. There are selectmen sitting in this room right now, former selectmen. It's pretty clear what we do. We serve as the executive authority for the town. We're also involved in appointments of various town committees. In terms of the work that I've been involved in since I've been a selectman, there's a couple of notable things that I'm happy about. One is that we oversaw the successful transition of two of the major departments in town, that being the police and fire. Those are critically important appointments. Public safety is really something that we all have a stake in. I parlayed my planning board experience and sought to keep the discussion about South Hingham going. So I started the South Hingham Working Group. We've been meeting steadily, covering a wide variety of subjects as it relates to development up there. We have a good group of people sitting on that committee. I also initiated the Flag for Soldiers campaign, which provides a town flag to all the service members and their family who serve in country. So we've done a code of conduct. We've done a lot of different things. I pretty much am what you see. You ask me a question, I'll give you the answer. You may not like it, but I tell you what I think. So I'm hoping that you vote for me. Most of the people in this room I know, and those that I don't, I'm making that pitch. So appreciate a vote on election day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. And since Paul, since Paul is the only candidate for Board of Selectmen, I'll open the floor up to questions right now. Does anybody from the audience have a question that they'd like to ask for Paul? Now, don't be shy. Al Chambers?
Paul, discussion or plans or the possibility of acquiring a new senior citizen place seemed to die quietly after Allied purchased the property. Can you all hear me all right? Yeah. After Allied purchased the property up on behind the athletic fields, Hingham Mutual Insurance Building. What are they going to do with the building? Is that still alive for us as a potential use for senior citizens?
Despite the straightforward nature of that question, Al, that's a very complex answer. What happened with Alliance 2 weeks ago was an informational presentation of the Board of Selectmen with respect to the property at the Hingham Mutual site on Beale Street. There's been no formal filing. We're working presently with the Lincoln Street Avalon 2 submittal, as it's called. The ZBA is in the process of deciding whether or not to permit that. There's been some iterations as the project unfolds, which impacts on the number of units. That in turn may trigger other statutory safe harbors that would apply to the 40B process. Whether or not that motivates Alliance to continue on that site is an open question. I don't have the answer for that. But to the broader question that you speak to, the senior center and the needs for space is something that is an ongoing effort on the part of the selectmen, whether it's a discussion of the existing town hall and whether it should be expanded in some way. It is true that we looked at Beale Street as a potential site because it's got 50,000 square feet, so it would be ideal for a lot of different uses beyond just the senior center. That is something that we continue to do on an ongoing basis because we're very sensitive to the fact that the senior center is pretty cramped. Having said all that, however, we continue to grapple with the reality that the growth revenues that we've enjoyed in the past are not present, so we've got a lot of balancing to do with the needs for infrastructure improvement, most notably North Hingham Fire. The people in South Hingham are raising the issue of response times and the inadequacy of the existing fire station in South Hingham by South School. So there's a lot of balancing to do here, but it isn't as if the senior center issue has receded to the backwaters of our consciousness. That is something that we continue to think about and we want to be nimble and able to respond to opportunities. But to get into it in any more specificity would be premature on my part.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome, Al. Yes, ma'am.
So given that, especially you just said that, that revenues are down, I'm curious what your opinion is on the Aquarian purchase or non-purchase. I am against it for revenue reasons and permanent personnel Hingham reasons, and pensions, healthcare, etc. What will become Hingham employees if it is purchased, and I'm wondering what your position is on it too.
I could give you the legal response. Quite frankly, the matter is in the hands of the court, and how the court applies the formula to calculate the price is going to drive the decision on whether or not this is an academic discussion or whether it's very real. But let's assume that the court rules consistent with the position that the town has taken throughout this litigation, and the price comes in at what we think it should be. I'm for it. I think that if we acquire the water company on the terms that we envision, we are going to save millions of dollars for future Hingham residents, and the generations to come will be a beneficiary of our foresight today. Right now, we pay everything, including a profit to the water company. I think that we can run the water company effectively. I think that we can put the kind of infrastructure improvements in it that it desperately needs. We have an incredible unallocated water loss there. That is something that we can't leave to the vagaries of a foreign corporation to decide whether or not we should have new pipes when we're literally hemorrhaging water into the ground. So, yes, I am for it.
Any other questions from the audience? I have one follow-on to that, Paul. If the number is determined, the price that comes back is determined to be closer to Aquarian's estimate than ours, would you consider the funds, I think we're at 1.2 million, that the town has spent already in investigating whether we should purchase it or not, was a good use of taxpayers' money?
Well, respectfully, I don't think that we would have taken the votes that we did to spend that kind of money unless we did think it was a good use of taxpayer money. And we've had the combined expertise of some very talented residents who served as former advisory chairs and are all different in their own way. Research this, look at the documents, make the assessments, deliberate, and make the recommendations they did. So, quite frankly, I'm going to be very surprised if the court rules in any other way other than the one that we've adopted.
One way or another?
That is, I thoroughly agree, and I'm hoping that we have it soon.
I'd like to ask a question about taxes. Is tax stabilization or reduction the goal for the selectmen?
We continue to do that.
Excuse me just a minute. The question is tax stabilization a goal of the Board of Selectmen?
The shorthand answer is yes. We haven't varied from that policy. I don't want to be in a position where I'm talking to the town saying we have to raise taxes. I definitely am not in favor of doing that, which is why the issue of growth is such a sensitive one to me.
Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you. Please join me in thanking Paul Healy for coming to join us today. Thank you, Paul. And I'd like to invite Michael Puzo, who is also running unopposed for re-election as town moderator, to the lectern.
Thank you. Thank you for turning out today. Of course, thanks to the Republican Town Committee for sponsoring this forum. I am Michael Puzo. I'm privileged currently to be serving as your town moderator. Of course, the position of moderator is peculiar to New England, as are many things, including the concept of town meeting. Open town meeting to me is one of the core elements of what makes Hingham the distinctive community it is. I am proud of the fact that we not only have hewed to the course of retaining the institution of town meeting but that despite the size of this community, we have open town meeting. To me, if you parse through many of the things that the town takes as part of its fabric of life here in Hingham, whether it's open space, conservation land, commitment to first-class education, the kinds of things that we are considering as a community at town meeting in a few weeks, all of those issues really flow from the fact that we have an engaged citizenry. Although we do have, of course, competent municipal employees, an active board of selectmen, the fact that it is all of us working together as the town's legislature that really drives the life of Hingham, what we value, where we will spend our tax dollars, and the like. Of course, to have open town meeting requires someone to preside at the meeting, the position of moderator. It's a joy to do, quite honestly, to be with all of you for a night or two or three or four, to do the work of the town. And if you think about it, we watch the spectacle of a national election unfolding right now, and compare that with the eloquence, the debate, the thoughtfulness, the civility of what is emblematic of our open town meeting. It's really quite a contrast. So the role of the moderator, of course, is to work at that meeting to ensure that I know the rules, that they're applied fairly, that they are even-handedly applied, that when there are matters in which there is controversy, that all sides are heard, and that when we come to vote, we have the confidence to know the vote is an accurate vote and reflects fairly the will of the meeting. The other responsibility of the moderator, of course, is to appoint folks like you to boards and committees, an authority and responsibility that the moderator position shares with the selectmen. We are blessed in Hingham to have so many engaged citizens. We step up, we volunteer. Many of you have done that frequently. If you've not done it before, or if you're ready to do it again, I encourage you to turn out to fill out a talent bank form. Town meeting will begin Monday night, April 25th. I encourage you again to be in the gym by 6:30. The computerized check-in has worked well. I'd like to start promptly at 7 o'clock as we did last year. Whether we can conclude the warrant in one night remains to be seen. And of course, I do ask for your vote on April 30th. It's a great honor to be with you today. I thank you for turning out on a Sunday afternoon, and I'm pleased to be with you. I'm happy if you have questions to entertain them to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any questions from the audience?
Oh, thank you, Ed.
Would you please go to the microphone?
Remember I told you.
Thank you.
In your capacity as the person who appoints so many committees, tell us how you reach out and how you expand the number of potential people to bring in.
Among the things that I have continued to do that have obviously been a tradition for many years is the talent bank form. We do, in fact, have many folks who fill out the physical form that's in the back of the warrant. We now have, not surprisingly, an electronic version of that form on the town website. You can fill it in online and submit it online. The other thing that I do in conjunction with the selectmen is for several weeks, both on the town website, other sites that are willing to republish, Facebook and the like, what we put together, we put the word out there. So there are various internal sites to the town where people post things of public interest, including, of course, the Hingham Journal physically, the Hingham Journal electronically, the town website. And we've gotten very good traction, particularly via the application of social media now to a younger generation. And reaching out to people, including my own children and their friends, and saying, retweet this, get it out there. And then it links back to the town website. So you can then just follow the link to the town website and fill out the talent bank form. The other thing we do, of course, is we make telephone calls. We ask folks to consider town service. Whom do you know? People will send in to us resumes. Somebody's new to town, for example, and they'll say, I met this person, seems quite thoughtful, moved into town recently. I've encouraged the person to serve, talked about how volunteerism works, civic engagement in the town of Hingham. And again, I ask all of you and the folks who will watch this at home, step up. I mean, it's your town. I say often, you don't go to town meeting, you are town meeting. Town meeting is a body politic. It's the legislature of the town. And the volunteers who work, whether they're selectmen, advisory committee members, CPC, all the town boards and commissions, committees, that's how we believe in self-governance. I think it is a core principle of Hingham. And when you think, well, what's so special about Hingham? Yes, we have a lovely harbor. We have all sorts of lovely things. But the fact is, we believe in the right of the citizen to govern himself or herself. That's a core principle of this community. And the folks who are willing to step up and serve despite busy schedules, young families, kids who need to be read to or put to bed, it is essential to the well-functioning of this community. Thank you.
Are there any more questions, or before Michael heads out the door on his way? Please join me in thanking Michael for coming today. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to invite the members of the candidates for school committee to come to the front table, please. There are 4 candidates who are competing for 3 open seats. Thank you. I will invite the candidates to come to the lectern in alphabetical order, and I would ask the audience please to hold their questions until all the candidates have had an opportunity to make their opening statement. So I'd like to start, please, again alphabetically with Carlos De Silva. Carlos, do you want to come up to the lectern, please? Yes, please.
Good afternoon. I am Carlos Da Silva. I'm running for school committee. I am a Hingham homeowner for almost a decade, and I am the proud parent of 2 sons. One, a recent graduate of Hingham High, and the other currently a sophomore there. Both me and my wife of 23 years, Rita, have been active in Hingham Public Schools. She as a vice chair of the middle school PTO, and me as a soccer coach. I'm currently an assistant coach with the under 16 boys team and a board member of Hingham Youth Soccer. And both my wife and I are active members of the Hingham Boosters. There are 4 reasons why I'm asking for your vote for school committee. 1, there are developments in Hingham High, in Hingham, they are threatening to flood our school up to 1,000 more students. Why does this matter to you, whether you have children or not? Because more students means more costs. Costs that probably will not be covered by the revenue, as you heard earlier, that we will get from this mega project. And who will pay the differences? Everyone else. That is, unless we go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and fight for mitigation. I am the only one running for school committee that has previously served in the Zoning Board of Appeals and have the experience to negotiate the best mitigation for us representing the school committees. 2, contracts. Hingham schools will renegotiate in several contracts in the coming years. Those contracts collectively represent approximately 80% of the school operating budget. That is about 40 million. As a chief negotiator, I have successfully negotiated multiple higher education contracts in Massachusetts. With me on the school committee, I can help Hingham schools get a win-win contracts too. 3, school culture. There have been recent incidents of bullying encountered in Hingham schools. Unfortunately, these are not isolated incidents. It is imperative that we as a community come together and improve the culture at our schools. Here, I have a unique skill for this important responsibility. I am a certified diversity trainer. I can help Hingham improve its school culture. 4, mandates and aid packages from state and federal government. We need to maximize the aid and minimize the mandates. Otherwise, we all pay the difference. I have a lifetime of work with state and federal officials at the state and federal levels. I am well known, I have the best connections to for pressing the issues that Hingham School need the most. And I ask for your vote on April 30th. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. And I'd like to ask Ray Estes next, please.
Thank you, Laura, and thanks again to the Republican Town Committee. I'm really pleased to be back here for a third time. My name is Ray Estes. I'm running for a third term on the Hingham School Committee. My wife and my 4 children have enjoyed living in this community for many years. My 4 children attend the public schools, and I'm pleased to be able to give back to this community that benefits them so greatly. I feel really good about my time on the school committee. I've been fortunate to be involved in a lot of great successes that have been very beneficial to this town. As chairman of the school building committee, a separate role that I serve as, I led the new middle school project, and that has turned out to be a wonderful, wonderful success for this town, particularly coming in on time and nearly $4.5 million under the town meeting appropriation that you voted for back in 2011. I also was instrumental in bringing the improvements to the high school fields that were much needed, putting together a public-private partnership, which was really remarkable. $3.75 million of our town taxpayer dollars, together with well over $1 million of private funds from citizens. Some of you are in this room. Before I ran, I worked together with a number of individuals in town and was instrumental in the successful veterans home on Fort Hill, working to put that great asset in this town. I helped with the tenant selection and service plan development, as well as serving as a neighborhood liaison to that project. I'm very proud. As I look out of my window every day, I see that house and I see the veterans coming and going, and really am proud of that. I was also instrumental in bringing full-day kindergarten to Hingham. That's something that I'm extremely proud of, Liza and I worked together on that, and it's a great success, and I think it'll benefit many kids in the coming years. I have experience and institutional knowledge that is very important to this committee. We have a number of challenges that we're facing, evolving standardized testing that's happening at the state level, evolving curriculum, the challenges of the school budget on an annual basis with economic growth slowing and rising costs associated with state mandates, senior administration transitions that are happening this year and coming up for sure. I think that I bring an experience and institutional knowledge that's a very valuable commodity to this committee, and I hope to bring that to bear in the next 3 years on another term as a school committee member. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ray. I'd like to ask Liza O'Reilly to come to the lectern, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you to the Republican Committee for hosting the Candidates Forum this afternoon. My name is Liza O'Reilly, and I am running for re-election to the Hingham School Committee. It is astonishing to me to realize that my first term on the school committee is almost over. That said, I am proud to tell you of several achievements that I played a key role in delivering. Winning approval for the full-day kindergarten sliding scale tuition formula, which provided the financial means to finally implement the program. Improving significantly the quality and frequency of communications between the school department and families of the Hingham Public School students. On behalf of Hingham, I worked with Superintendent Gallo to lead the fight to get fairness from the state on its education mandates, policies, and funding. Finally, this year I was elected vice chair of the committee. I am running for re-election to the school committee because my interest and love of education and community run deep. My husband Tom and I are both graduates of public schools, and we believe strongly in the value of providing a quality public education and in the importance of participating in the process of delivering that. We have lived in Hingham for 24 years, and our 3 children have attended Hingham's public schools at East, Foster, the middle school, and the high school. Today, one is a 6th grader, one is an 11th grader, and one is a graduate, now a freshman at Boston College. In addition, I am also active in the League of Women Voters of Hingham and with Catholic Charities Sunset Point Camp in Hull. Hingham is recognized as a premier Massachusetts public school district. We have a great deal to be proud of in our staff, students, and facilities, and I am committed to making our schools even better and to prepare our children for all they can achieve in the 21st century, being good citizens, leading happy and healthy lives, and becoming lifelong learners in whatever field they choose. At the same time, I am mindful of taxpayers' money and making decisions with operational transparency. I believe in living within our budgets and responsible growth. This has been a challenge, but every year I've voted in favor of the advisory committee's recommended budget and made the tough program choices to deliver within those constraints. I am proud to share that Hingham delivers the best value for the money with the lowest per pupil spending costs of the top 50 schools ranked in the 2015 Best of Boston School Rankings. Better schools provide more opportunity for all Hingham residents, not just our students and our families. The teachers and staff find fulfillment in their chosen careers. Homeowners gain value in our investments. AAA bond ratings are retained. Residents feel confident that the quality of our town is reflected in the quality of our schools. As your elected school committee member, I will continue to focus on educational excellence and innovation, practical financial planning, and respect for the town meeting process and the taxpayer. I ask for your support and vote on Saturday, April 30th. Thank you.
Thank you, Liza, and I invite Kay Prajma to come to the lectern, please.
Thank you to the Hingham Republican Town Committee for hosting today's event, and thank you to all here in attendance. My name is Kay Prajma, and I'm running for school committee. I'm a graduate of the University of Florida with a major in German. After my studies, I moved to Germany for an internship in marketing. I then met my husband and lived in Germany for a total of 12 years. I worked during that time for a pharmaceutical corporation in international human resources. My husband's job then took us to Ireland, where we lived in Dublin for 3 years. In 2011, we moved to the United States and chose Hingham as a place to raise our kids and call home. As a full-time mom of 3 boys in 7th, 5th, and 3rd grade, I became active around Hingham community. Some of those activities include co-chair for South School's Spring Auction Committee, chair of Cultural Enrichment at Hingham Middle School, current secretary of Hingham Middle School PTO, and I taught typing to our children at South Elementary. Other community activities include helping Hingham Downtowns Association with Christmas in the Square, town captain for the organization to end Common Core in Massachusetts, and volunteer for CCD at Resurrection Church. I'm currently administrator for a Facebook group called Hingham Pinboard, which I created 4 years ago. It has grown to over 3,000 members. It is a forum where information and ideas are shared and is a tremendous resource for our residents here in Hingham. With my diverse background in international business experience, I would like to bring my creative ideas to the school committee. I've educated myself on a variety of topics including Common Core, high-stakes testing, and the budget. Both parents and teachers are seeking to repeal Common Core because of its negative impact on the school curriculum and our students. However, it is tied to federal funding, which makes it challenging to overturn. High-stakes testing is problematic because of its significantly increased in frequency. There are direct links to student anxiety. Teachers are having to teach to the test, which means less time for traditional curriculum, and is tied to big money. Testing is a useful tool, but we need to review the kinds of tests we are administering and how often children are being tested. Our school budget is very large and complicated and quite difficult for most to understand. It is hard to see what new initiatives are from year to year. I believe we should realign our budget with the budget process used by the advisory committee. My experience in human resources has developed in me excellent communication skills, the ability to work collaboratively, and an understanding of the importance of listening to the concerns and opinions of others. Being administrator of Hingham Pin Board has enabled me to facilitate constructive conversation on important issues. I believe my personality and experience would make me an asset to the school committee, and I hope you will vote for me on April 30th. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay, and all the candidates for school committee. As I said, there are 3 open seats and there are 4 candidates. I'd like to open the floor for questions. Is there anybody who'd like to ask a question? Leah, please come to the microphone.
I was wondering what the other candidates' opinions on Common Core were.
That way.
Sure. Common Core is an interesting topic. There's a lot of folks who link Common Core to high stakes testing, and it really shouldn't be done because they really don't have anything to do with one another other than our MCAS test has been aligned with the latest Common Core standards that were adopted by Massachusetts in 2010. Common Core is interesting, and it's interesting that folks in Massachusetts, or particularly in Hingham, would be against it because Massachusetts was on the forefront of helping to develop the Common Core standards. In fact, the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks from 2001 were the basis for the National Common Core standards. And before Massachusetts adopted them in 2010, and we adopted them with modifications, not wholeheartedly, there was a panel that was put together of I think 30 or so educators. One of those educators was Doug Holly, who at the time was the director of mathematics in Hingham, longtime serving, following Dot Gallo in that regard. He participated in that, and he was able to infuse some of the Massachusetts standards into the Common Core standards nationally to improve them before adopting them here in Massachusetts. So we were able to really play a key role in adopting those standards and making them appropriate for Massachusetts, and in Doug's case, for Hingham in particular. I don't see Common Core as a problem for Hingham. We've had terrific schools dating back to the 70s when Mrs. English served on the school committee. We consistently, and Liza talked about the per pupil spending, and we're consistently coming out on lists with very high rate of kids going to four-year colleges, and some of them very prestigious colleges, Ivies. We do very well on those standardized tests. We have many, many AP scholars. We have kids earning scholarships to state and national schools. We're really delivering a top quality education here, and the curriculum frameworks that we utilize to deliver those are the ones that are appropriate for Hingham. So I don't feel that from Hingham's standpoint, the Common Core is a problem. There may be other underperforming districts in Massachusetts that have more of a concern with those frameworks, but for Hingham, they're really not an issue from my perspective because of our involvement in developing them prior to adoption.
I would agree with Ray that for Massachusetts and for Hingham, the Common Core is not as dramatic of a shift as even other states that did not have such high standards. Massachusetts changed its standards going back to 1993 education reform, and so we've been holding our students and teachers accountable to very high standards for a long time. The other thing to think of with Common Core is these are standards. It's not the curriculum. Our teachers still have the flexibility and our administration to select the curriculum to what we're going to actually teach our kids. They have to meet certain subject standards and topics, but we have the flexibility of experiencing how to instruct them on that. And I can say as a parent, I have a current 6th grader and I have 2 older children in 11th grade and one who's now in college. And I can see the difference of how they're learning from especially my high school graduate to my 6th grader. My 6th grader, the type of problem solving that she has to do, I am amazed with what she does have to really think about what she's going to write on a homework assignment, as opposed to just reading a passage and finding the facts and rewriting the facts. And with the math that she does, she approaches, they have to solve a problem 3 different ways. It's different for me. I have to ask my 11th grader, can you explain it to her? But, how do you do this problem? But I can see in my youngest child that in her everyday life, I have seen her not get as frustrated with something and look to different ways of solving a problem. So, and that is related to, the new Common Core theories. So I'm not worried about that in our schools. I think we're in a very good position. I am a little worried about the citizens petition, because that would have a huge impact on, if we repealed that, to the investment of time and money that has gone into that and what we've been advancing to would set us back. And, but I will also say, I didn't like the proposal of the PARCC test that was based on sort of nationwide standards. And I went and testified at one of the hearings, the public hearings about that. And the commissioner heard those comments, and now we're looking at our own specific test in Massachusetts, an MCAS 2, as opposed to going with the nationwide version of that test. I have other comments about that test itself, but voices have to be heard and will evolve as we go along. But for Hingham and the Common Core standards themselves, I don't have an issue with them.
Why don't we let the other candidates address the question?
Oh.
Okay, we can do that afterwards, but
I just wonder why they still refer to thank you.
Oh.
As the dumbing down.
Oh,
Thank you,
Right,
Liza.
yeah.
Let's give Kay an opportunity. to
yeah.
respond, please.
Okay, and Carla.
Yeah.
I can explain that one. I agree. High stakes testing and Common Core are separate issues, so I don't think we should tie the two together. Hingham should be concerned about Common Core because the NAEP scores of our children are dropping. So that's where the term, the dumbing down of our children is coming from in the race to the middle. It's all about the NAEP scores. So because of that, I think Hingham should be concerned because Massachusetts has a lot to lose by adopting Common Core. Massachusetts has nothing to gain. So it's interesting when you go back and look at how MCAS was developed. It took 3 years for them to develop MCAS. We had educators, we had parents, we had open forums to develop our standards here in Massachusetts. That's one reason why Massachusetts is so great. We have an excellent schools, an excellent education here in this state. Common Core was not developed that way. Common Core was not tested. PARCC does not work. PARCC was started at 27 states and now is only in 6 states. And we should be worried about the MCAS 2.0 because they are saying now we don't know what it's going to look like. We'll be 80% PARCC. I think the importance here is to remember, regardless of your stance on Common Core or not, we just need to think about what is best for our children here in the state of Massachusetts. Again, Massachusetts is the leader of education in this country. We have nothing to gain by adopting Common Core. We need to keep education controlled locally. Thank you.
Well, just picking back on the answers of my colleagues here, yeah, I truly believe that also we shouldn't be mixing the two, and some folks at home do get very confused about Common Cause and high-stake tests and all the tests that our children are facing with. I would like to, instead of, because they already said it, so I'm not repetitive, I was born and raised in Brazil. Across the country, we have one common way of educating our children. Whether you moved from one state to the other, it's pretty similar. It's the standards, it's the norms that everyone follow. Now, as far as I understand correctly, Common Core that they're trying to push is to just have a similar fashion of teaching, whether you go from here to, Philadelphia or other part of the country. Now, I believe we should focus in what's happening right now, which is House Bill 340. That's essentially is calling places a 3-year moratorium on a so-called high-stakes testing. Why task force they're trying to create a task force to look at more closely in 4 education issues. One, the impact of mandated tests on teaching and learning. Secondly, the cost and efficacy of using technology in the classroom. Third, the use of student test scores in teacher evaluation. And fourth, the use of standardized tests as a requirement for high school graduation. As a parent of both a recent high school graduate and a current sophomore, I know students face a lot of tests in the course of their school careers. Coming from a family of many teachers, I know tests are only valuable tools when used wisely. And both parents and teachers agree it is better to teach to learn rather than teach to test. So I think we have to bring our focus back. Let's focus on House Bill 340. And I think collectively, if we work with our state and federal legislatures to put a moratorium to this, because obviously there's too many tests in the lives of our children, is raising a lot of anxiety. And they're having a lot of issues with depressions, and they're not being productive as students. That's the bottom line. So we have to come together as a community and address this face on. Whether we call PACS, Common Core, MCAS, regular MCAS, now MCAS 2. Many states are actually put a moratorium to all these tests. Let's look at it. Let's speak with the teachers, the educators. They are the professionals in the area. Like I said, my mother was a teacher in a principal of a school. My sisters are teachers. My niece actually teaches in Avon. In Avon, because it's a Title I school, they actually opted to go with PAC. And guess what? They're very happy. Now, I'm not saying that PAC is the right way to go, but I do believe that in order for one to be successful, we need to have testings in our lives. We have to be testers, and it is the tests that measure our success. So we have to evaluate all these tests. Perhaps it is too many. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the candidates for school committee? Yes, Gary.
And this is a question that might be related to some of the pressures and anxieties that the students are experiencing, or maybe not. I had a question about a couple of the unfortunate experiences that we've experienced here in town with some bullying and at certain theatrical or creative performances. And a couple of thoughts on that, because I think a lot of us are thinking about it, and I don't know if any of us have any answers. But I remember when my kids were in the middle school, former police chief Pereno was the DARE officer. And he had a wonderful relationship with the kids at the school in terms of keeping them away from drugs and other kinds of things that were addictive and would be a serious issue. And I'm wondering, because it's a kind of an issue that's systemic or is far-reaching in terms of the experience in not just this school system but other school systems, would it make sense to have some kind of an ombudsman kind of a person who's very experienced in dealing with these kinds of issues, to come in and help intervene, to help the school system deal with these kinds of issues with the kids in the classes that we have right now? And I'd just like to ask you for your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Why don't we start with Carlos, please, this time?
Thank you very much for the question. It is a very important question. It is a question that is on a very hot topic issue right now, given and what has happened here in Hingham, with a few incidents and throughout the state and the country. I mean, I think the moderator touched based on is what's going on with the politicians at the high level right now, one bullying another. Now, let me tell you this. The buck has to stop with us in the school committee, where also there is many times where questions are addressed to citizens, whether they have been in this town for so long. Why it should matter whether you're here 1 year or you're born here. Most important thing that people should be looking at it is that one is a very proud Hingham citizen, a homeowner, and we have children in the schools, and we care very much about all the issues that everyone that was born and raised here care very much. So, I am, as I said, a certified state diversity trainer by voluntarism, because that's not my profession. I am a program coordinator. I chose to go and get certified so I could train other state employees because of my culture, because I do understand the power of word. If you say the wrong thing, it could set a major problem. And that's what's happening now. Because whether, what happened with the Catholic Memorial in Newton school there, and whether one group start calling the others, chanting, where are you girls? And the other one respond, I don't have to repeat. That is where it starts. Now, I proposed that, we ask, because we do have a policy in place. We do have a policy in place, and what I propose is that we ask our education professionals and our school administrators to propose an enhancement to our current bullying and prevention intervention plan to specifically address recent events. And we should encourage input from faculty and students. It is crucial to have buy-in from the community-wide, including the students, leaders. The other students, like my son, that is not currently on a position of leadership, feel peer pressure. It may be embarrassed to ask the co-workers about it. So we go to those leaders, and we make sure that we are valuing the input. And, we propose that, we review those policies that was last revised in 2014. Now, just getting the students in a room like this to read the policy and then leave signing a document that they'll play adherence to is not enough. What is the best way of teaching people? A lot of people, I'm very visual. I love when people do role plays. So I believe that role play is a way to go. We have theater, and this has been happening during drama club. Let's propose that. Let's do a whole role play on diversity, culture. By the way, niche.com has measured us as C- in culture and diversity. How about if we work very hard in 2016-2017 fiscal year and bring us to an A+? And I'm willing to do that. Thank you.
Seconds or so.
That's pretty much what it is. I am proposing that I become part of, as a liaison to the working group to revise that policy and work with the community right to get buy-in from everyone. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's unfortunate about the events that have been taking place. When we received the journal question, I reviewed the policy, and the unfortunate thing here is that there is a policy which maybe need to be updated, but these events are still happening, and the culprits are getting away with it. So I think we need to review maybe some of the programs that we are offering in the school. I know there's the two-step program. We have DARE, we have health class, but how much in DARE and health class are we talking about bullying? So those would be the first things that I would like to do as a school committee member, is to review the programs, and maybe there's more that we need to be doing in the schools. But I think also as a community, because I'm administrator for the Hingham Pin Board, it's amazing how many parents are crying out about the bullying issues we have in this town, but lots of great suggestions on what we can do to maybe support the arts more, because athletics does get a huge support in this town. But who's being bullied? It's the dance group, it's the theater group. So maybe there's more that we need to do for them. And I think Carlos also touched on it. We need to be role models ourselves in anything we do, whether it's a teacher, a coach, a school committee member, a parent, we need to be respectful of each other, respectful of opinions. Again, as admin of Hingham Pin Board, I've seen plenty bullying done on social media. Having strong guidelines is key, but also having people that are willing to step in and stop the bullying when it's taking place is also key to preventing any cases further. Thank you.
I agree with some things that Carlos and Kay have said. I believe that in the elementary schools and in the middle school, we do a really great job with the kids. And I think that our challenge is with the high school. I do think that we need to change the way that we're interacting with the kids and the parents and the whole community at the high school level. It's obvious that we do need to have some change. And I know the staff are working on some things. We've touched on it a little bit with the school committee. But I really feel that in the high school, we need to engage all students and all parents. The parents, when you get to the high school level, you know, the kids are supposed to be more independent and start to live their lives. But the parents need to be communicated to so that they can provide that guidance to the students. And we need to set that expectation to the parents that we expect your kids to behave. And if we see them out of line, we're going to call them on it. And I think we need to do a little bit more of that. I think that, you know, I was saddened that what happened in the auditorium, that anything was blurted out. No matter that the fact that it was derogatory statements, but that students were just not being a good audience, period. And I would like to see the teachers more empowered to stop anyone from misbehaving during a performance. And so we do need to work on that. And whether it's bringing in an ombudsman or a program, but I don't want to see it just be a one-time activity. I think we need to engage everyone, and it may be even engaging the entire community in a community-wide effort in, you know, regards to national politics and everything. We all need to be good citizens. And what Mike Puzo said of, you know, we are town meeting, we are our community. And so I'd like to see all of us engaged in it and all of us committed to good behavior and respecting one another.
You know, Liza and I are agreeing on more and more things lately, and it really makes me feel good because it makes me feel like, okay, if someone else who's a thinking person is thinking that way, then it's validating my own thoughts. Yesterday at Linden Pond, she talked about her position on charter schools. Spot on. I agree with it 100%. On this issue, I'm in total agreement. We do a great job at the elementary level and at the middle school level with Second Step program and other programs. Rob Ramsey, our current DARE officer, does a terrific job with the kids in 6th grade, picking up from where Chief Perino left off. But we're really seeing a growing problem in the community. And these two events in the fall with the football game and just recently with the theater performance, you know, a few kids are causing the problem, but it's representative of a larger problem, a growing culture of intolerance, of lack of respect. You know, it's something that we as a community need to find a way to address. I'm not sure if having an ombudsman is the right thing to do, if adding another paid position is the right thing to do. We have existing programs that work well at some levels. We need to find a way to get a program at the high school level to address, you know, what kids are thinking about, what kids are exposed to, and how this culture is evolving, and how we as parents are allowing that to happen. You know, social media is all around us. There's no avoiding it. You know, YouTube videos and TV shows and all of that, okay? We're all responsible for what our kids are exposed to. And I think we need to do a better job and be more vigilant into what they're doing. You know, one of my kids at one point made a comment in the tone of voice and the way she said it was just from a TV show. And I said, I don't know what they do on the TV shows, but that's not how we talk in this home. And you're not going to talk to your mother that way. And the change in the culture needs to happen at home first. They're not learning this behavior at school. They're learning it outside of school, whether it's through social media, it's through YouTube, it's whatever it is. And as parents, as coaches, as teachers, as mentors, we have to be more engaged at the high school level. Youth groups through church and other organizations to make sure that kids have the support, kids have a structure in place that we can really address how you're supposed to behave as you're becoming a young adult and getting ready to go out into the world on your own. You know, that's not the behavior. If any of those kids who said those things were seniors, I'm really disappointed, and I'm a little afraid of what they're going to be when they leave high school and go into college, because those are not the adults that I would feel proud of having educated and sending out into the world. We need to find a way to work together, not only as a school community with administrators and teachers stepping up to do a better job. We as a school committee need to find a way to get our existing policies enforced better. And I think we as a Hingham community of parents, of coaches, of mentors need to do a better job of making sure our high school students know how to behave appropriately.
Thank you, Ray. We have time for just one more question for the school committee, and I'll have to hold all the candidates to a 1-minute answer. All right, is there a question? Anybody? Yes, Chris? Will you come to the microphone?
Since it was brought up anyway a couple of minutes ago, what is your thinking on charter schools?
Let's start with Kay this time.
I've been following it somewhat. I've learned a little bit in the last few days. I don't think Hingham is really affected by charter schools. I support charter schools. I think it's wonderful that parents have a choice for their children. There's one thing about Common Core and charter schools have in common. Children are not alike. They're very, very unique. So, traditional school may not be the appropriate school for a certain child, and charter school might be a better choice. So that's up to the parents. I think what Hingham may be concerned about would be the funding of charter schools. And I think it is something that I'd have to learn a little bit more about, but it would be advantageous to know that Hingham isn't losing funds because children are being transferred within the middle of a school year, which I understand the money doesn't necessarily follow the child. So yes, I do support charter schools, but I think we need to look more closely at the funding. Thank you.
Hingham has 12 charter school students and 2 students that do an online academy that the state authorizes. So it's not as big of an impact on Hingham itself. I do have a concern at the statewide level of the governor's proposal and the citizens petition because of the financing of charter schools and how that will affect all students statewide, and especially in our surrounding communities, and Brockton, Randolph, and out west in the more rural communities, that the siphoning off of charter school money is could dramatically affect those communities, and creating, separate schools that the community has no say in how it's funded because the funding mechanism is statewide decision.
So, as I said, I agree with Liza. I think the biggest concern is funding. The RISE Act, that was a Senate bill that's been in the news just this past week. That's a step in the right direction, but it's still not ideal. Raising the cap is one thing, as long as the Chapter 70 dollars go along with it. And that's the one thing that has really been a concern for a town like Hingham. Traditionally, we have about 4 to 5 charter students. I think it's actually 10 now and not 12 with the 2 virtual students, but be that as it may, it's still a small number, and it doesn't really impact us, but it can. There was a recent column in the Globe this week talking about how the dollars don't necessarily, they do follow, but it takes 6 years. Well, he's talking about Boston. Underperforming districts, this is a big concern. I think the ability to have school choice is important in underperforming districts to have charters available. But if they impact funding in other towns that aren't really in the need, then that's a real concern for us.
Thank you, Ray.
Oh, here's my thing. I like to bring it back to the local level where we have in the first place great education system in the public schools. We are very fortunate that many residents of Hingham can afford to send their kids to private schools. And we have public schools in the first place for a reason. We have to understand that charter schools does take money away from the public schools. If we continue like that, what's going to happen in the future? Are we going to have is a bunch of private schools that's called charter schools, but they're not really publics. They're private because they operate differently. They are not run by the community, the population, the taxpayers. They are run by a given number of board members. So let's bring it back to Hingham. In Hingham, I'm completely against charter schools. Now, what are we talking about? The 12 students there have the privilege of going to other locations are children that have some special categorization. Those are the out-of-district kids. But we don't have charter schools in Hingham right now.
And thank you to Jerry, our lightning round timer. Please join me in thanking the school committee candidates for being with us today. And I'd like to invite the rest of the candidates who are running for office to come up to the front of the room, please, and to the table.
Would you like to see her, Laura?
That's perfect. All right. So we have Kirk Schultz, who's running unopposed for the seat on the Board of Health. We have Gary Tondorf Dick, who is running unopposed for the Planning Board. And we have Daveline Cooper, who is running for the Housing Authority. And I'll call them in alphabetical order to come up to the table. And that means we will start with Kirk Schultz from the Board of Health.
Well, good afternoon. I appreciate the Republican Town Committee to do this very important function, because it's essential that we as the citizens of the town know what's going on in government. It's affecting our community, because if you don't participate, things happen and then you get surprised, and all of a sudden at the end of the day, it costs money. So to undo it. So my name is Kirk Schultz. I'm running for my fifth term on the Board of Health. I'm born here in Hingham. I live over in South Hingham, Prospect Street. The Board of Health has been quite rewarding for me because I am a physician. On the Board of Health, we do minimal standards as far as health and safety of the community and public health. And so many of you probably have septic systems in your yard. And so we protect the water supply here in our town. That's one of our main features that the Board of Health oversees. And in that role, we oversee septic systems. And we'll talk a little bit about sewer later on. Board of Health does a number of things. We also regulate tobacco. And I hope I get a question on that a little bit later. We have a 3-member board. I'm the youngest or the most recent member on the board of the Board of Health. So I appreciate being on the board. Done a lot over the years to help perpetuate the good things that we see in the town through the Board of Health. I look forward to your vote in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. Are there any questions from the audience for Kirk Schultz on the Board of Health, candidate for Board of Health? Chris, please come to the microphone.
Two things. How are our restaurants doing as far as being, with all this stuff about Stop and Shop and everything? Are our restaurants pretty good as far as cleanliness and Board of Health issues?
They're supposed to be. We have a full-time food inspector. And that's a unique question in itself. We have a full-time food inspector. We're actually transitioning from the current food inspector that spends some time in Florida over the winter to someone who's going to be here full-time. But I brought this up at the event on Wednesday. You know, we had a restaurant in town that was on probation for about 4 months. No one knew. You know, this was last year because of a foodborne concern. And what we did as the Board of Health is we drafted, well, I actually did it, regulations. And regulations are tough. You know, you don't want to regulate anything. You want to insist that there are minimal safety standards, but you don't want to over-regulate. So we put together our own in Hingham regulations, supplemental regulations, over and above the state regulation for those concerns that we found within this restaurant. So we have not only the federal food regulations, food code, we also have in this town local regulations to identify the issues that we found here in Hingham that had to do with having managers that just untrained. The manager would leave at 9 o'clock, and the person that's left over to see the establishment until closing has no idea on how to maintain quality safety standards because the manager's left. So one of the critical violation that we put into that regulation was insisting that someone who is going to be there'll always be someone in the restaurant that is trained with SafeServe, the state required food safety program. And the state regulation only requires that you have the manager do it and he can train the staff. And we said, no. We need to have someone who actually has gone through and learned that program from the state and has been tested to make sure that they understand it. As opposed to what we were saying with this restaurant where the individuals, they had a problem with just the language. And so if they had a problem with the language, how are they going to be able to understand the written regulation and the consequence of that? So our restaurants here are fabulous, and we're going to insist that they stay that way because restaurant and food service is very important to our town. We really do have some wonderful food establishments here. No, it's absolutely public. Go onto our website. All the minutes are there, and you just can do the search for a restaurant, and you can find it. It was about 5 meetings that we went through, and so nothing is. The only thing we do in executive session is dealing with certain personnel matters, with sick time and illnesses. We've been doing that lately, but other than that, everything's there. Because when I brought it up last Wednesday, people were surprised. And I don't hear from the community people saying, oh, geez, I got sick at so-and-so restaurant. What are you doing about it? So it's not something that is occurring with any great numbers within our town. And you brought up the restaurant, was it Penner?
It came to mind because Stop and Shop has been having a problem. And they said there were a lot all over the state.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with the age of the building. I don't know what you saw the statistic. It was in the paper that every food establishment, supermarket in Boston was at some point written up for a violation. I would say in Hingham, every restaurant at some point has been written up for a food violation. It's the critical violations that you need to look at and mandate that those are corrected immediately. And with the others, it's an educational process. And so what you saw in Stop and Shop was minor compared to what we had with the restaurant that we were dealing with. And then that was also minor compared to the outbreak at the Coolidge Corner. It wasn't Panera Bread, but it was a similar Chipotle restaurant. The norovirus versus some type of E. coli contamination. So that's what we do. We keep abreast of that.
Does Hingham have much of an opioid use problem or not? And if so, does the Board of Health have anything to do with educating people or helping people with that?
The Board of Health is a member, Kathy Crowley, a town nurse, of the opioid commission that we have, and it's our town and a number of other towns on the South Shore. And so, 3 people die per day from this problem. And so the answer is yes, absolutely. You just don't hear about it because people drug addiction is a huge problem, and people do not want to admit that they are addicted to something. And so they keep it silent. And so I don't know if you've ever had an opioid before, and if you had pain, it's a really pleasant drug. And we've had a number of people that, with close friends of mine, that have become addicted because of the way that they were prescribed this and then it changed into something else. It is quite powerful drug. So it's a huge problem. I love what the Governor Baker has done with that. I had some help in writing some of the language that is in the current law regarding that. I'm in the Opioid Task Force review booklet. You can look and see my name there. And so this is something that we absolutely deal with in the Board of Health, and it's something that we're going to be doing with the schools. One last thing on that. I know I'm taking some time. One of my patients at the office, I practice in Brookline, he's part of the Boston Bulldogs. What is the Boston Bulldogs? And this is a running group, and it's made up of addicts, former addicts, family members of addicts, or people who support addicts. And they have a 5-mile, a 5K race in which they support each other, because addicts, you go down into that despair. They retract from society. So to get them out and to get them physically active again is a wonderful thing. I hope that we're going to have a Boston Bulldog race here in the fall, and that we're going to involve the other communities. We're just talking about it. It's not something that has been promoted within the group yet. I'm suggesting it. I've sent emails over to the person that's in charge of our opioid program, but I hope to see something like that, because it involves not only the person that's intimately affected, but everyone else behind the scenes that is suffering just the same. So that's one of my, I love this topic. I love talking about it, and addiction is one of my things. So we'll stop at
For
that
one
point.
more question.
One more Board of Health question.
Does anybody want to ask him the tobacco question he was asking for? I see someone in the back.
I just wanted to ask if you had had any Narcan training for the people in the town at all.
We have, yeah.
Let me repeat for up here so everyone can hear. The question is, do we have any Narcan training for the people in town?
Oh, absolutely. The entire fire department and police department, the first responders that are out there that are dealing with this, and physicians get that also.
That's great. Please join me in
Thank you.
thanking Kirk Schultz, Board of Health. And next, I'd like to invite Dave Aline to the lectern to make her opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Town Republican Party, and thank you for being here, and for anyone who's watching. My name is Daveline Cooper. I've moved to Hingham in 1990 and have been here pretty much ever since then. I went off to Hull for about 3 years, and I'm a homeowner at Hingham Woods. I moved here from Kentucky, so one Commonwealth to another. And I, in Kentucky, was a lawyer, and I'm trained as a lawyer here, and I also teach at a Boston area law school. My interest in the Hingham Housing Authority, which I've now been a member of since February, I'm filling out someone's term, and so the Board of Selectmen appointed me, and now I get to run, and I'm unopposed, so I'm assuming I'm going to win. And so it's for a 1-year term, and then next year I could actually run for a 5-year term. I'm particularly interested in housing issues and housing for low-income citizens, for the elderly, for the mentally and physically disabled, because it is my view that we judge a society by how we treat those who are most at risk in our world and who have the most need for our services and our care. And so I think this is a place where that is put into action in terms of the provision of housing for the elderly, again, mentally and physically disabled, and low-income persons. What the Hingham Housing Authority does, which not everybody is clear on because we have different groups here. We have the Affordable Housing Trust, we have the Lincoln Street Apartments. The Housing Authority is actually oversees the Thaxter Street Apartments. And so that's really the major focus. And the board also oversees the federal Section 8 vouchers that provide housing assistance to citizens. And in fact, some of the veterans housing in town is through those Section 8 vouchers. My interest in housing derived from being a legal aid lawyer in Eastern Kentucky in the poorest congressional district in the United States at that time. And I represented tenants who were facing eviction from housing authorities. And sometimes we were challenging housing authorities on their policies. So it was a different role that I was playing then. But I think it's really important that our citizens who live in public housing are treated fairly, have decent places to live. And so this isn't, in my way, much of a change. In my work in terms of skills that I think I bring to the position, I teach contracts, I teach remedies, I teach alternative dispute resolution. So I think these are skills I will bring to the Housing Authority work. I look forward to it. I've already, as I said, been to 2 meetings. It is a big learning curve, and it's, I think, going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be incredibly rewarding and fulfilling. So I ask for your vote on April 30th, and thank you again for having me here today.
Thank you, Dave-Aline. And are there any questions from the audience? You did such a good job. I have one. There are several housing development projects on or near Beale Street, including one sponsored by the Housing Authority. How do you propose to manage the effects of those developments on the Beale Street conditions?
Well, as someone who lives off of Beale Street, I think this is a town that needs more affordable housing. So I'm actually not necessarily opposed to the development. I know we're in the beginning stages of looking at property that the Housing Authority actually owns. There's other projects and how those would come, and those I don't necessarily have really an opinion on at this stage. But I think there is a need to think about how we could increase the diversity of housing options in our town, and actually the diversity, particularly economic diversity within our town. So I actually support the provision of more housing for the elderly, the low income. So I'm not opposed to families in that context. How they work together, the one thing I will say, it seems to me the town itself needs more cooperation and work between the various boards, because there's also the other proposal is the Affordable Housing Trust proposal. So that's not the housing board. And then we have all of the other 40B, et cetera. So I don't know what I'm setting off on the phone there. But, you know, so a lot of that's going to be done through other government agencies within town. But it seems to me sort of a comprehensive plan for how we develop might be a good thing. But we seem to have done fine with lots of development for non-low income people, for non-elderly, at least poor elderly citizens. I realize Linden Ponds is a great place for many people, but you have to afford to live there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, then thank you very much, Dave-Aline, for joining us. And I'd like to invite Gary Trondorf-Dick, who's candidate for Planning Board, to the lectern.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks to the Hingham Republican Town Committee for scheduling this event and for inviting me to attend. I think this is a great exchange of ideas. I certainly learned a lot from all of the candidates that have presented, and I think it's a great idea for a town forum kind of an experience. I'm running for the Planning Board. I'm running for my 3rd term. I have the 5-year seat that's on the ballot. Just want to explain that very quickly because there are 2 Planning Board seats up for election on this ballot. The second is for the 3-year remaining portion of my fellow Planning Board member's term where he had resigned, and so now another person will be running for the remainder of that position. Mary and I moved to Hingham in 1986. We've raised 2 sons, Dan and Dave. We've been very lucky to have lived here and experienced the quality of life here and the quality of education here. We feel that our children have been able to reach the greatest of their potential as a result of living here. What I'm also seeing is that Hingham is in great demand because of the quality of the schools and the quality of the lifestyle here. And a lot of people want to move to Hingham. We have some incredible pressures in front of the Planning Board in terms of an update on the master plan. We have an excellent master plan which was written in 2001, which creates some very good standards and goals and objectives to balance responsible development with maintaining the residential village character of the town and the quality of all of our natural and built resources. The planning board is in the middle of discussing that. We're going to hold hearings on that. We've had a serious demographic study done by MAPC where we're learning about transition in demographics. We're at the current point where the baby boom is 5 years away from a major transfer of wealth relative to downsizing in residential real estate. We also have a situation in the town where there are very few housing opportunities in the $300,000 range or less. So that's one of the areas we are looking at. The second area we're looking at is some very serious negotiations with these developments that have been proposed on Lincoln Street, on 3A in the Shipyard, Beale Street, which has just come in, and then there's also another 40B on off of Ward Street at Viking Lane. So these are going to take up some very serious hearing time. We also have another issue that we spent a long time working on. Laura was part of that committee, and that is the looking at housing diversity relative to accessory dwelling units and or intergenerational kinds of housing types. It's a very difficult issue to resolve, and I welcome you to come to those hearings. The last critical issue, and not the least, is managing the future, managing positive change for growth for the future of this town. And that involves South Hingham. It also involves, I think, linkage with purchasing the Lehner property, because in order for us to expand in a positive way, we need to have the resources, one of the most crucial of which is a water supply. Thank you very much for your consideration and your vote in the election on April 30th. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And do we have any questions for the planning board for Gary? I'd like somebody in the back there.
Hi. I get confused very easily. And the other night I was watching Joe Fisher run a meeting on television, and person after person after person was getting up regarding the property on Lincoln Street and 40B. And I get mixed up between what the planning board does and what the zoning board does. That was the zoning board that I was watching, right?
Conducted that hearing. The difference between the two boards is under state statute, the planning board is a policy-making board relative to land use planning. What the planning board does is articulate and create bylaw revisions that are submitted to town meeting, but those bylaw warrant articles are basically addressing questions, as to how the town might move in a certain direction relative to land use planning. The zoning board is an adjudicatory board. The zoning board hears many applications, and they hear them relative to conformance with the zoning bylaw. Under state statute, the zoning board is the body in the town that hears the comprehensive permit applications. A comprehensive permit application is basically heard under a 40B, and under that, they have the jurisdiction. On a 40B project, the planning board reviews it relative to site plan review, like we do on all other subdivision control bylaw applications. The only difference is that our review is advisory. And so we will sit in conjunction with the zoning board on many of our land use hearings, but on the comprehensive permit, the zoning board is ultimately the grantor of the comprehensive permit. So it's really a statutory. Now, if I could continue on that, let's say we talk about the proposal on Lincoln Street, which is Avalon Bay's Hingham 2 shipyard proposal. In the hearing that you were listening to, was Avalon came in with a 250 unit proposal. Now, they're doing it within the shipyard, which is fundamentally a planned unit development. The shipyard has set certain intensity of use regulations, so many units per acre, so many kinds of uses, whether they be residential or commercial or retail in a mixed use context. The planning board basically did a very detailed review of that proposal and found that it was at variance with the zoning regulations in the planned unit development in the shipyard, and thereby we said we are not in favor of it. However, under 40B, we can't stop these developments. On the other hand, it's all a negotiation. We basically said to them, you can't propose a development that's going to be at variance with the quality of life in the adjacent neighborhoods. You can't do something that's going to compromise Bradley Woods. You can't do something that's going to compromise Bradley Park. You really don't want to build a development where the front door is 15 feet above the ground. It's sitting on a table under which is a parking garage. These are currently called podium developments, which are done in urban environment. You see them in Boston, you see them near Fenway Park, you see them and there's typically 6 stories on top of a parking garage table. And so he said, and there are many reasons for that. One is density. One is that you're building a canyon, a big wall that's going to essentially prevent the sunlight from reaching the rest of the shipyard development. But more importantly, it's the social aspects of it. That kind of development does not allow eyes on the street, does not allow people to have their entrances at grade, at the streets, at the sidewalk area. That's how you get to know people. That's how the neighborhood knits itself together. What we suggested is that they come back with a development that's within the same intensity of use requirements and regulations as is what is currently built in the shipyard. And in order to do that, this development would complete the remaining residential development in the shipyard. But they have to build a neighborhood, and they have to build something that's going to be supportive and positive in the neighborhood socially, and not just 250 units, which is a very intense development. So we are currently at 190 units, down from the 250, because they got no positive support at all at this public hearing. And so they listened to it. It's all a negotiation. The proposed development on Beale Street will probably go through the same process if, in fact, it gets proposed, because there are other issues there. And we have the similar process on Ward Street at Viking Lane, which is a 36-unit 40B proposed on a site that could probably handle 6 houses. So again, it's intensity of use. How does it relate to the other neighborhoods? Is it cohesive or is it corrosive? So it's a negotiation, and it's a very tricky negotiation under the 40B process because the state doesn't give us a lot of leverage. On the other hand, on the planning board, we're in the process of producing a housing production plan, which will allow us to identify strategic aspects of how we could address the diversity of housing options, and of which there are many. But I just wanted to kind of clarify that. Yeah.
Detailed answer,
Quite
Gary.
welcome.
We have about 4 minutes before
Okay.
we have to conclude our
Okay.
program, which is time for another question. Mom, did you have one?
Sure.
My question had to do with South Hingham. I live in South Hingham, have for 54 years, and I'm concerned about the development. And I know it's a long issue, so just quickly, Gary, could you address it?
Quickly, where we are in the current status of South Hingham development, and I'll ask Jerry to help me out because Jerry's on the South Hingham Study Committee, and he's a very articulate member and very helpful. We have a situation where in 2012, the town voted to rezone the property on Derby Street north of Derby Shops. And it's a relatively large piece of land. It's currently about 260 acres, if I have it right, Jerry, plus or minus. And we basically allowed commercial uses. The town allowed commercial uses in that property. There are currently 2 large landowners who own most of that property, and one of them owns really the lion's share of it. Under this zoning overlay district, we can do commercial development. That's essentially not retail. It would be office. It would be that kind of commercial development. In a by right scenario, in a special permit scenario, which is other types of development are allowed in that by special permit, one of which is car dealerships. So that's basically how we got Lexus in that area. The town has spent a long time working with the owners of this property and working with the town boards and agencies to define the constraints and to also look at the opportunities in this development area. The 2 largest constraints are natural resources, sufficient water supply, and sufficient sewerage and or wastewater. That will be the bookend. Though the definition of those constraints will define the maximum development scenario that could be done in that area. we haven't had any response, as far as I know, in terms of ideas or visions from the owners of the property, other than very general ideas that they're supportive of what the town is looking at. But I think we're at this point where managing the density and the kinds of uses that are going in there so it doesn't disturb or compromise the quality of the adjacent residential neighborhoods, traffic of which is the biggest impact. We have small streets, old, residential streets, such as Gardner Street, such as Cushing Street. Well, if we have, let's say, if a development of 1 million square feet creates, let's say, 5% increase in traffic in the development on Derby Street, well, that 5% increase in traffic is a 50% increase on Gardner Street. So there's an issue of, the overall view of this, and also the impact on the other surface arterials, which is Main Street, and or the other parallel north-south streets, Ward Street, Free Street. And so it's a delicate balance. The zoning has allowed a certain amount of square footage. When that zoning bylaw was passed in 2012, we did not have a plan. We did not have a master plan in front of us. I voted against that warrant article because of that. I think going forward, we can't really do anything until we have a master plan in place that is going to define what is the vision, what are going to be the consequences, and what's the mitigation plan. And how does it affect? How do we control it? Not just for South Hingham, because it has a crucial impact on South Hingham. It has a crucial impact on the town. I mean, in some respects, we're kind of at this pinnacle point in the town where we have to be careful not to be victimized for our success in terms of how this town is growing. And welcome.
That's great. Thank you, Gary. And I'd like to thank all the candidates for coming to join us today. This concludes our program. And I'd also like to thank the library for hosting us here in the Witten Room. I'd like to thank the audience for participating. And in particular, I'd like to thank the members of the Republican Town Committee who organized this event: Edna English, Kathy Peliquin, Helga Jorgensen, Leah Godfrey, Jerry Seelan, Mary Jane Hanron, who can't be with us today, and I hope I didn't leave anybody out.
Just one thing.
Yes.
I'm running for sewer commission first term. And I hope you all vote for me. And I know what I'm doing. And thank you very much. And call me at the house if you want to know anything.
And finally, thank you to HCAM, which will be airing this forum on the Hingham Channel in the weeks leading up to the election. Town elections are Saturday, April 30th. And don't forget, there is a state Senate primary election this Tuesday, the 12th. Please don't forget to vote. Thank you all for joining us today.